You can't collect Social Security being a drug dealer. You understand? You can't retire being a drug dealer. There's prison. There's prison. There's a cemetery. There's the cemetery. It's not much of a choice left. So in closing, I would like to say, people, wake up, understand what's going on in your community, be a valuable part, come out and support the Coney Island Coalition Against Violence. There are several community-based organizations that has the professionals and that has the means to deal with everyone's situation. Little kids, we want to start taking you guys to trips, making you aware of your culture, making you aware of what Black history is, making you aware of who your people surrounding you are. Because everyone in this place almost lives in Coney Island. Can I say that? We see each other all the time. We walk the streets together. We go to the same stores. We share the same values, y'all. Let's wake up. Let's put our thoughts together. Let's come together and be a community that can thrive and do better as a people. I mean, you know, I'm sorry. Sometimes I get choked up because I'm passionate about this. Because I live this life. That's what's so important to a lot of you guys that you need to know. I'm not patting myself on the back. I live the life. I live the life. And thank God I'm still here to give my testimony. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Keith. Now we're going to hear from Hope Campbell, who's a part of the Anti-Violence Project, and she'll speak on mental health. And in case I didn't make it clear before, all of these people, panelists, are part of the Coney Island Coalition Against Violence.
Thank you. Well, to begin, I would really like to take time for you guys coming out and also for the coalition itself for inviting me to speak on this panel. What I'd like to talk about briefly is the connection between poor mental health and violence. You know, it's apparent to me, you know, as someone who is a former teenage runaway, that people don't really change. And when you study history, you're really studying, you know, human behavior. The same things that I saw when I was sleeping in Washington Square Park on the N train, the same things I saw when I eventually got to my college dorm, the same things I see out here. That the subject of even accessing mental health support in the Black, Latino, and immigrant communities is taboo. It's almost like it's contrary to the image of the strong Black woman or the strong Black man or at whatever nationality. It's to the point where when I ride the bus to get to work, almost every day I see a younger parent who is overwhelmed with themselves, and they're telling their child, usually a male child, you know, even in the face of loss, stop crying. Stop crying like a girl, shaming them in their budding manhood. The thing that I really came here to say is that the same way when you have a persistent sore throat, you would definitely seek some sort of medical remedy. Well, I feel like the same way is when you have a sore heart and psyche, you should seek remedies for that condition too. As taxpayers, whether you're working or not, whether you've never been able to work legally, I want to say that you have a stake in this, and this is your right to access these services from the city and the state. As taxpayers, even if you're not working, every time you go to the store, every time you buy a dollar meal or something, you pump that 8 and change cents into it. That is your investment in your city. These are taxes. Taxes are the price that we pay for society, and you guys are paying it whether you're working or not. As taxpayers, you should be able to access medical support and support groups at every economic level. The other thing that I want to say is that many times when people know that they're on the edge or something's not quite right, they still ignore it. And what people end up doing is self-medicating to make those feelings go away rather than calling 311 or calling the Stella to find out how they can get some support. The major ways that I see people self-medicating is through the use and overuse of illegal narcotics and alcohol. Where they're like, oh, well, the boss did this, or this one is tripping, or I'll just kick it to the spot. Second way I see people self-medicating is we all want to feel good. And there are no judgments about behaviors in terms of romantic matters, but a great deal of people out here are participating in unprotected sex. And we see the evidence because Coney Island is one of the epicenters of new HIV cases for people ages 16 to 25. Coney Island leads the entire city. Coney Island and South Brooklyn lead the entire city in unexpected pregnancies, which cause stress within themselves. The other thing, the last way, is violence in itself becomes a coping mechanism to the point where people are unloading out here like it's the Wild West for the smallest of reasons. It's not that people are unwilling to have a conversation, it's that they think they're having a conversation when they're being violent. Someone steps on your shoes, you retaliate in the conversation. And we all know that's not an acceptable thing to be modeling for our children. Now, what I want to say is that it is very common to have these feelings because people are dealing with a lot. People are dealing with the effects of constantly dealing with what appears to be rampant and random street violence on a regular basis. And with that, wondering, when is it going to be me or someone I know and love? They're constantly dealing with the effects of trying to survive on public assistance monies or living paycheck to paycheck and not quite making ends meet. For some, literally running out of food before the end of the pay period or before the next month's benefits are allotted. And chronic under or unemployment. People are dealing with the effects of choosing to parent when they themselves are not healed from their childhood scars, especially if they choose to parent as a minor. People are dealing with the effects of misconduct amongst institutions that are charged with our public safety and our public health. People are dealing with the effects of incarceration and trying to re-enter and be successful in a society that stigmatizes them as ex-cons, thugs, hood rats, and the such. And on that note, people are dealing with the effects of not being able to make their money legally and participating in illegal entrepreneurship, in which, when they make their money, they always got to look over their shoulder for every dollar. They can't really come into adulthood because everything has to be in their mama's name or their girl's name. And they're always wondering, is this steady money? The money's not steady, it's up and down. So you can't really plan for your future. And so on and so on and so on. The other thing people are dealing with in these areas is the effect of disenfranchisement. Mainly racism, sexism, classism, and ageism. And people are also dealing with, when they're trying to get to school, mainly females, but not always, the effects of sexual bullying on the street and other forms of street harassment. The last thing that I see people, I mean, the list is extensive, but I really just want to talk about that loss of potential that people feel. Because once you're a survivor of violence and you see that someone you've lost has been victimized, it's thinking about all the times that you saw them laugh, the movie you went to, the time you played ball, and what they could have been. And so I'm saying not accessing mental health support in any form, basically, it means that you might tend to self-medicate, and then you or your children can't be what they're destined to be. So, to wrap up, I would urge you to seek some sort of mental health, not just so that you can be more successful in your life, but also so that you can be present in the lives of your loved ones, and you be fully participatory in their development because they're depending on you. Now, one of the things that I do for therapy is that I get involved in my community. And I would encourage you to do so too. It's not just getting involved with the coalition, which I hope you do, but going to the library, being part of a reading program, maybe volunteering at your child's school if you have children or if you have the time, going down to your church, maybe fostering fellowship outside the institution. It's the way that I came to deal with as someone who is 3 or 4 different minority groups. The sense of monumental helplessness, hopelessness, and disenfranchisement. The feeling that, you know, when I walk these streets, there's nothing I can do about the fact that the people that run my city may see me as nothing more than obsolete agricultural equipment, and therefore a menace. So that is the therapy. That is another form of therapy that you can participate in to make yourself know that 1, you are valued, and 2, that you have the power to change your community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hope. Now our last speaker is Jose Gonzalez of the Guardian Angels to talk about community involvement, to segue from what Hope just said.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. I'd like to thank Man Up that showed up all the way from basically not Coney Island, from East New York, but it shows community involvement because it shouldn't be just one person's hood and not another person's problem. I actually was speaking, I was speaking the other day to a lot of different people, and when I tell them I live out in Coney Island, they're like, Coney Island? Do you live on